for our community. Also for you, maybe you want to recap some of the concepts that Florentina will share with us. So first of all, I don't know if you remember the description from the webinar. I like very much the description, and I want to start with this because it's very funny. Managing scope creep is like going to the supermarket without a cart and a list. Oh no. We know what will happen. Yeah. We want just one thing, but in 5 minutes we have more than 10 products in the cart. Um, I hope that all of you, yeah, has experienced something like this. Don't hide, please. I know, we know. Florentina is saying that projects are the same. We know small changes pile up there, and suddenly we have deadlines, flip, yeah, budget explode, and things like this. And the team, oh, the team, and this is what I can say about the team. Um, and let's see how we can stop this madness. I'm happy that you join us today. Florentina is a senior project manager at MassMutual, and she has a passion for agile delivery, keeping project. She's saying going off the rails. Yeah, she has the experience with Scrum, Kanban, and also business analyst. I think it's a plus here, Florentina, but maybe we can talk later. As a project manager, also with business analyst experience. And she's saying that she loves chaos, but let's say, let's see. It's my pleasure to invite on our online stage Florentina Saizu. Thank you for being here with us, Florentina. You have the mic.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to mention is that also you don't have to. It's advisable not to go to shopping when you are hungry. So it's again some scope creep is going to happen over there. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am Flori, and I'm really excited to be here today and to discuss a subject that's really important, especially in this area of project management. And I'm talking about scope creep. I will focus more on agile projects because most of my experience was in agile projects, but I know scope creep isn't happening only here. One thing, if I'm out of breath, please excuse me. I am very much pregnant and I'm always finding myself with the out of breath. So I'm sorry for that. I wasn't used to this. So hopefully it will be resolved in like a few months. So yeah, here we are. We are going to talk about scope creep today. The agenda for today is we're going to have a little bit of an overview of what scope creep is, some key learning objectives, because yeah, I like to have a plan because I'm a project manager and that's my job. And I think that if everyone from this school would have like at least one single idea that comes out of this call, I'm very happy. I would be very happy. So I'll share a few tips and tricks and things that I've been doing. And if you remember at least one of them after this call, I think this call was a good value. We're going to go through understanding scope creep, what it is, where it comes from, and then the most fun part is how to actually say no without upsetting the clients or stakeholders, however you want to call them. Some agile-friendly approaches to managing changing priorities, because we know that agile promotes changes, but sometimes it's promoted too much and we can't cope with it. And then we're going to have like a summary, some takeaways, and some Q&A. One thing I would like to ask from the beginning is if you have any questions, or if you feel like if you have some examples or some additions to what I'm saying, please feel free to do so and to add them. So without further ado, let's just go through the overview. So What scope creep is? So scope creep is one of the biggest challenges in project management, especially in agile project management, where I just mentioned that change is actually embraced. So while agile methodologies promote flexibility, uncontrolled changes can lead, just as Daniela was mentioning at the beginning, to missed deadlines, budget overruns, team burnout, which is, from my point of view, one of the worst things that could happen. And of course, reduced quality, because if one happens, it's like in the dominoes. If one happens, it will lead to the other. Um, the challenge for project managers and delivery leads is to actually push back on that scope, on that extra scope that's being brought in, and to still keep the client satisfaction and the stakeholder trust up there. So it's really hard to kind of find the balance between the two, but we will explore a few ways on how to do that. And yeah, this session explores strategies for managing scope creep in a diplomatic way, because yeah, you can just say no, but there's also a chance that tomorrow you won't be that project manager in that project. And yeah, negotiating the scope changes and balancing flexibilities with the project goals that we currently have. When it comes to key learning objectives, so for me, it's, if you would get a few things from this call, it's really would be really valuable. And the first thing that I was thinking of was how to recognize scope creep early. It's like doing your risk analysis. If you have a good plan from the beginning, you're going to have higher chances of being successful. And if you're recognizing scope creep early, um, it's and you're going to prevent it from derailing a project, of course, your project is going to be a little bit more successful. We're also going to go through some techniques for saying no diplomatically. So if you just remember at least one technique from the ones that I will mention, I think it will be super valuable. A few strategies for prioritizing and negotiating scope changes effectively, because it all comes down to like negotiating at the end of the day. And I think that for us as project managers, or any related roles to project management, negotiation is a really, really important skill. Some agile-friendly approaches to handling evolving requirements. This is mainly related to agile, but there are a few things that are cross-functional, let's say, so they're also applicable to waterfall if you're working in waterfall projects. And some real-world examples of scope creep. This is something that I would like to keep for the end of the call, where I would invite you to give some examples from your life. I'm also going to give examples throughout the call, but if you have some other examples or other techniques that weren't mentioned in the call, I think it would be very valuable for everyone in the call to listen to them. Okay, again, sorry for my shortness of breath. Okay, so understanding scope creep in agile projects. Oh no, before going to that, does anyone know what scope creep is? I'm pretty sure you do, but if anyone wants to give like definition of that.
I'd say that it's basically an extension of the work which you initially plan to do, and maybe a stakeholder comes and asks for an additional thing to be created or delivered. So yeah, basically an extension, I would call it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So basically anything extra that wasn't agreed. I have a better definition here. Scope, better than mine, not yours, Christina. Scope creep happens when new features, changes, or requirements are introduced without proper evaluation, prioritization, or resources. Yes, sorry. Mircha, do you have like anything to add here? Sorry, I couldn't hear. No. Okay, yeah, sorry. Okay. So basically anything extra that was not actually agreed at a certain time, it's a scope creep. Just like in our plan for going to shopping, we agreed that we're going to only buy these 3 things, and then we realized that, hey, we want that and that and that. And this is how our stakeholders work as well. They also want that feature and that feature and that feature. So that's scope creep, adding additional work that wasn't actually agreed at a certain time. So while Agile encourages adaptability, and that's why our stakeholders in many companies love Agile, because we are supposed to be super adaptable and always accept their changes, but they don't know that those changes are going to create some problems. So the first thing um, that scope creep is going to cause is increase in project costs, because more work than we originally estimated means a higher cost. Delays in delivery, of course, more work means more time, unless we are completely deprioritizing something, which rarely happens because our stakeholders always want everything. And the second part of the slide is actually more related to the teams, and the first one is overworked teams. And I've seen many cases where I saw teams that were actually burnt out, and this happened because their project manager or whoever had the authority to accept a certain amount of new features, they didn't have boundaries. And when you don't have boundaries as project manager, your team is going to be super overworked. Plus, if you have a very effective team, one that's really good and wants to demonstrate um, and they don't know how to say no as well, they're probably going to be burnt out. So again, one of your decisions as a project manager, as in saying no is going to cause another problem in your teams. So that's not very nice. The last thing that I mentioned in here is actually reduced quality. That actually happens because your overworked teams are going to get tired, they're going to lose their motivation, and the quality is going to decrease because they're not going to have enough time to spend on their tasks. They're going to hurry. So cutting corners to accommodate extra work is going to lead to reduced quality. If we're going to move on, let's see which are some common causes of scope creep. So the first thing that I mentioned in here is something that I've seen so many times, vague or evolving requirements. This happened to me, and it's still happening, I don't know, every week. Not every week, but at least every sprint planning. We are receiving extra work and extra work and extra work. That's the classic path in Agile. And usually the extra work that's being requested, it's like a line. We want that project, which is a line. We don't know what that means. Which are the risks? Which are the teams that should work in here? Which is the benefit? Do we have a deadline? So usually the requirements are really vague. And that's causing a lot of problems, because usually when a stakeholder comes and they're saying that, hey, I want this to be delivered as well, you're probably going to say like, yeah, let's have a look or something. But the next question that comes is, when can you have this done by? And if the only description you have is a line, you're either probably, ideally you can say, yeah, please let me analyze this and I will come back to you. Or you can say like, yeah, it's going to take us 3 months, and probably that's not going to be the case. Another cause is stakeholders pushing for just one more feature. Yeah, that's happening very often. And because sometimes we don't know how to say no in time, they just get used to it and they take it for granted. So they're like, okay, can you just take this little feature as well? I know it's something small, but maybe you can fit it in this sprint or something. So they're always going to push for more because this is what stakeholders do. I would do that as well, because trust me, when I'm going with my husband to the supermarket and we agree that we're only going to buy some vegetables and I see something sweet that I really, really love, I'm going to be like, can we just buy this little chocolate? Just this little one. And this always happens. That's scope creep in my diet. Poor prioritization or lack of clear scope boundaries. This is really important as well. And it's causing a lot of scope creep, because if you don't have a well-defined prioritization process, you are going to mess it all up. You're going to assign the wrong resources, you're going to have wrong estimations, and that's going to cause delays, so scope creep. Failure to document and manage change requests. This is something really interesting, and sometimes this doesn't happen, but I think it's really valuable to do so, and we're going to go through that in a few slides. Every time you're receiving new requests, they have to be tracked somewhere, and if you can actually build a visualization out of that, like a burn-up chart, I have an example in a few slides, and you show that to your stakeholders, they're going to realize that in like 3 months, they doubled the work that they initially requested. They probably doubled the scope of the work and the budget and everything. And sometimes they're like, I think this is too much, or maybe they'll just come with their feet on the ground. So that's a good thing that we can do, tracking and documenting every change that we do, that we accept. And over eagerness to please the clients and having this yes culture. When I was writing this bullet, let's say, I was like, oh my God, this is, especially in Romania, we are taught to say yes all the time. And I remember my mom always being like, come on, you have to be the nice one. You always have to say yes. And when I was younger and smaller, that was easier. But when I started to work, that actually started to become a problem easily. Step by step, that became a problem. And at some point, that led to burnout, to me and my colleagues and everyone else, because yeah, I don't know how to have healthy boundaries. So this yes culture, debatable. It's sometimes good, but you have to think a bit before. Do we have any other examples of common causes of scope creep besides everything that I've mentioned in here? No? Okay. I think I summarized everything. Okay, now let's move to the nice part, let's say. The art of saying no without upsetting the clients. I've mentioned clients in here, but they can be sponsors, they can be stakeholders, they can be whatever you have in your project. I know this is actually different from one case to another. I have 5 kind of tips that I use. And this first one is my favorite one. I've mentioned here that you have to almost always reframe the no, which is dual and it's sometimes harmful to the stakeholders, to a yes, but. And I have 3 examples in here. The purple one and the orange one are my favorite, and the blue one is a little bit more direct. And here are a few examples that you can consider instead of saying no when someone comes to you and asks for more. The first one is related to trade-offs. So I've mentioned here, we can absolutely consider this, but let's discuss the trade-offs. So you're doing the good part, you're agreeing with them, you make them understand that, okay, you are heard, I've heard you, I'm taking this into consideration, let's say, but what can we trade off? So what can we deprioritize out of this? The orange one, that's a great idea, but to keep us on schedules, so again, make them realize the reality, we may need to deprioritize another feature. Which would you like to drop? So again, you are making them aware that, hey, this is extra work. And if they want that to happen, they would have to deprioritize something else. So in both cases, you are agreeing with him, her. You're agreeing with your client that it's okay. I hear you. I want to do that, but this would probably have to be a trade-off. So again, your negotiation skills have to come up and you have to do something. The third one is we'll need an additional budget or time to accommodate this. Are you open to that? So if they're not eager to deprioritize something, which usually happens because they don't want to ever deprioritize anything, you probably have to make them aware that, okay, this is going to cost a little bit more because we need extra resources to deliver this, or this is going to take us longer because we have tons of priorities, everything's a priority, and it's going to take longer. Yeah, so this is my top tip for today. Reframe the no to yes, but. And this is also psychological, and I was learning this a while ago when I was doing some coaching classes, that when you're starting something with no, you're going to demotivate the person you're talking to. But if you're starting with a yes, but, I know it's a little bit more sneaky, but it's more effective. So I'm using it. This is what I was telling you about earlier. When we are accepting things, we also have to use data to support our position. And this is an example of a burn-up chart. I'm pretty sure everyone saw this sort of chart before. This is a very simple one that's basically just showing the number of features in time and when we were supposed to complete this, and then the increase in the scope. And yeah, this is super effective when you're showing this to a stakeholder, because they're going to see that, okay, okay, in like a few months, we almost increased by 30-40% the number of features or requirements that we initially had. So they're going to see that, okay, if we're going to continue this, the completion date might be, I don't know, never, because this is usually what happens. They're just going to add more and more and more. So show some impact analysis of the requested change. So if they're coming to you and they're saying, yeah, I want that, you're just going to take some time, analyze what they request, and then you're going to come back to them and you're going to back that up with some data. Make something super simple. That's my advice, but that's up to you, of course. Try to create something super simple but effective. They love dashboards or something easy to read and easy to get a decision out of. So I mentioned here burn-up charts, burn-down charts. These are more related to Agile, and they're super easy to get out of tools like Jira. And yeah, I've mentioned here an example. Based on our current progress, adding this feature will push our delivery by 2 sprints. Would you like us to proceed with that in mind? So you're showing them that, okay, I will do this, but this will lead to like a month delay, or however that's going to take. So yeah, second advice, besides not saying no, is always use data for supporting your position. They love data, they love charts. So that's a really good tool to use. The third one is aligning the requests with the business goals. We are project managers. We need to think a little bit more strategically. And some of the things that you have to have in mind is asking them how that aligns to the core project objectives or the organization objectives. Because especially in agile projects, when you're doing like lots of demos, sprint reviews, however you want to call them, they always tend to have more and more ideas because why not? And sometimes you have to make them understand that, okay, this is not crucial for now, or this does not align to the business goals. We only agreed we're only going to deliver this in the MVP. We only agreed we're going to deliver this MVP, not that specific feature in the next period of time. And one example I've mentioned in here is this feature is interesting, but how crucial is it for our MVP? Yeah, and another thing that I mentioned here is that if the change doesn't directly contribute to the key goals, it's easier to deprioritize, because if you're making them understand that this is the MVP and this is the thing that you requested and it's totally different, it's way easier to make them realize that, okay, we're not going to do this now. I have two more tips. One is offering alternatives or a future roadmap. We know that sometimes in agile projects, if the project that we're handling it's very big, we might consider doing it in phases. So one of the things that we usually tend to do is understanding which is crucial for the phase one or the first release that we're going to do, and whatever is not crucial is going to go in the next phase or so. So an example that I mentioned in here is this is valuable. Let's consider it for phase 2. So this is not crucial for phase 1. Let's consider it for a future phase, and then you're going to prioritize again once you have to start that phase. Suggest the leaner version. Can we deliver an MVP of this feature instead? Again, if it's something super big and the requirements are vague, which usually happens, you can offer to deliver a smaller version of that product in like an MVP version. And sometimes they might be happy with that MVP and they wouldn't want to add anything else. And my favorite thing, I was using this when I was a Scrum Master or when I was working as a business analyst. It's, of course, having a backlog, because that's usually what happens in Agile, and having a prioritization process. And one of the things you can do is tell them that, yeah, I will add this in the backlog and I will prioritize this alongside everything else. And I think I saw, I know I saw something today related to this. Give me a second, because I had a picture. No. Let's see. I saw this picture in LinkedIn. Let me know if it's visible to you as well. How do you say in Agile? I've added to the backlog. I know it's not exactly like that, but you use this approach. Yes, I know. It's a funny one. But it's something we can do. It's a tool we have and it's available to us. Yeah, so that's something you can always do, especially if you are working in Agile. And yeah, another thing that you can do is engaging your stakeholders in decision making. So basically delegate the decision to them and having them decide what's the most important or not. In the past, I've used techniques such as Moscow, where you are basically categorizing the things that they're come up with must have, should have, could have, won't have. Facilitate trade-off discussions. I've mentioned this a million times, but again, negotiation is crucial in project management in general. So if we add this, what are we willing to delay or deprioritize or get rid of, and implement cost of delay discussions. Again, if we delay this feature, what's the business impact? Is there a business impact? Sometimes it's not. I have one more slide, and then I would really like to spend some minutes in like having an open discussion with you as well. I have some agile-friendly approaches to managing changing priorities. And I've mentioned in this slide that I have three things that I would like to focus on. The first one is using agile built-in flexibility to manage change. So yeah, again, agile promotes change, but not all changes can be accepted immediately. And we know by theory that, especially if you're using Scrum, which is the most used framework, we aren't supposed to accept extra scope or extra feature or extra tasks during the sprint. So one of the things that you can use is the time box sprints. And if something comes up to you, or you probably have like a product owner, but you can coach him. And it's not crucial. You're going to say that, hey, yeah, I'm just going to add this in the backlog, and in the next sprint planning, I'm going to assess it alongside everything else. And you're not going to accept that in that specific moment. So use that time box sprints idea and just go back to whoever asked for the change. Rolling wave planning, reassess priorities regularly instead of committing too far ahead. Again, this is something I've seen happening. For example, in the company where I'm working in, we are working currently, we are using PI planning, and we are doing some rolling wave planning. I've seen PIs that plan for like the next 6 weeks, which is okay. I've seen PIs that plan for the next quarter. That's my case. I'm not saying one it's good or one it's bad, but I think it's a good thing to have at least a rough idea of the priorities in the next period of time. And the last one is having some backlog discipline, which is really, really important, more important than I would have expected. And it's really important to know most of the things that you have in the backlog. I've seen so many cases where we had like 200 items in the backlog, and most of them, they didn't have like any information added to them. They were like just a title, so nothing else over there. They were obsolete, they were very old. And there's one thing to have 200 items in the backlog and to have no idea about most of them. And there's another thing, having 30, 40 items in the backlog and having at least a rough idea of the things that you have over there. So if you have like 30, 40 items, which is still quite a big number, but you know what they're about, when someone's coming to you and it's asking for extra work, in your head, you can already visualize, okay, we have 30 more items more important than this. I'm not sure this is going to happen, or yeah, we'll just reassess it with everything else in the backlog. So backlog discipline is important. You don't have to do this necessarily as a project manager. Maybe you have a Scrum Master in the team that can handle that, or whoever. But it's really important to know at least the priorities of those tasks. If you have deadlines, add them, they're crucial. So yeah, another tip for today: have your backlog clean, groomed. Strengthen change control process in Agile. I know this is something debatable, I would say, because theoretically in Agile, we wouldn't want a lot of governance, goals, and everything, but sometimes it's a bit too much. And one thing that I saw in some projects where I worked is having like some sort of a formal change request process. You can have it in Jira, like a change ticket, or you can have like a review board where you would have stakeholders presenting something similar to a project charter. I know we shouldn't use project charters because it's agile, but at least the idea behind the project charter, where you would have a description, some benefits, and something that gives you a little bit more of an idea of that change. And yeah, the last one is tracking scope creep metrics. Again, if you're using tools such as Jira, it's really easy to kind of keep track of that. But maintaining the visibility over the impact of mid-project changes is crucial, and it's also crucial to have those available to your stakeholders at any time. Last but not least is keep the leadership and clients in the loop. We tend to do that. That's why clients actually love Agile, and that's why, yeah, they tend to want to have this framework because they're closer to us. And some of the things that I mentioned is using burn down charts to show the impact of added work, burn down charts, burn up charts. You choose whatever you want. Make sure they're always available to them. If you're using tools like Jira, they can just have the link and data is always going to be available. Conduct demos or check-ins to align expectations. Again, theoretically that happens. If it doesn't, I think it would be a good idea to have them. Regular demos after each iteration or sprint, whatever you're using, it's really crucial because you can get the feedback really fast, and then you can adapt to that and you can plan based on their feedback. So yeah, I think it's important to set the expectations with them. Last but not least is using lean UX methods to validate a request before full development. And this is something I was doing, especially when I was working as a business analyst. We were creating some sort of mock-ups or something visual that would that we would share with our stakeholders, and they would kind of sign off on that. And of course, they can still require some changes, because why not? But we would make sure that, okay, this is their vision, and this is something that they're expecting. So again, visual things are very important to them. Okay, summary, takeaways, and Q&A. Some of the things that I want you to leave this call with is recognizing scope creep early and assess its impact. It's really important to always understand that, okay, this is something new that came to us, and always try to agree with your stakeholders, but don't be like, yes, we will do this and it will take us 5 months. Be like, yes, let me take a look into it and see if this is something reliable, if it's something that can be done, and let me just get back to you. Or you can say, I really love this. I heard this a million times when people don't have an idea about what they're being asked. Their first reply is, yes, that's a really great question. Let me get back to you. I've seen that happening so many times, and it's funny. I mean, instead of saying I have no idea, you can just be like, yes, it's a really great question. Say no strategically by offering alternatives and trade-offs. Always have that in mind, because you agreed to something and it's always going to have an impact. Use agile-friendly processes to balance flexibility with control. Engage stakeholders in prioritization discussions. Try to delegate as much as you can to them. That's the best, because they want that product. And use data-driven insights to support your arguments. Again, data is crucial, not necessarily, I mean, not only here in Scoop Creep, but everywhere. And one thing that I've learned a million times is that they love a good graph, and they love to see some numbers that can drive them to better decide theoretically on something. So yeah, that's it on my side. Now, do you have any questions or any other examples of scope creep, real life examples of scope creep and how you handle them? I'm really keen to listen to you as well.
Thank you, Florentina. If I may have the first question, maybe.
Yes.
You said before about the time box when, in order not to alter the scope of the sprint, which in Agile it happens pretty often, and if I know well, the scope of a sprint of a started sprint should not be changed. How is this time box coming in parallel with the sprint and the team's capacity?
Yeah, so I had that in mind, but I forgot to mention it. So yeah, we know that we have the sprint goal, and that's actually the most important thing for us, and it's actually more important than what we agreed to deliver in a certain sprint. So if we realize during the sprint that something new comes, usually what happens is that you're going to have to assess that alongside everything else that's currently in the sprint, which is going to be very frustrating because you're probably going to have people already working on it. So what I did, what was my approach was, I actually assessed it alongside everything else. I deprioritized something else from the current sprint, and then the next step was, I mean, the next step, it was actually a step that I was doing in parallel, was actually discussing with the team, because this comes with a huge frustration. And if there's one thing that happens when you're changing things mid sprint, when people already started to work on something, it's frustration. So yeah, we deprioritized something, but in the same time, I discussed with them and I tried to make them understand which why is this happening, first of all, which is the impact of this change, and why this was the better decision. So yeah, sometimes you have to accept things during the sprint, but I've mentioned the time box as a, let's say, as an excuse that you can use with the stakeholders when things aren't actually super important, because stakeholders tend to say that everything is important, and when everything is important, nothing is important. So yeah, you can use that as an excuse, but you still have to have your feet on the ground if something is urgent, and that's another crucial skill for a project manager.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So
Thank you for the please.
please.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Florentina. So, if I may, you've mentioned actually that practically scope creep comes, and in a way change is encouraged, especially within the agile environment. If it
Yeah.
would be to think about a moment, can you please share a time when actually scope creep actually led to a positive outcome in an agile project, and what made it manageable rather than a problem, than a detrimental issue?
I think that actually happens a lot of time, and pretty often, because yeah, our stakeholders, they change their mind pretty often, and sometimes they realize that the business goal that they initially communicated, I don't have like an example right now. It's something that happened multiple times, I guess. um, the business goal that they initially communicated to us is not the same anymore. Guess what? So we have to change, and yeah, that leads to better outcomes, or something, I don't know, other things happen, or you have to change priorities because something happens in the world. And yeah, I have one example I just realized. I was working in a consulting company, and Ukraine war started, and we had to create visas. I was working for the UK government, and the UK government had to create some visas for the Ukrainian people to go um, to the UK because Brexit and things. And suddenly, most of the teams that in that project, they had to get rid of everything that they were doing and shift their priorities. That was a complete scope creep because we didn't even focus anymore on any of the project that we were doing, and we changed our focus completely. But that led to a really valuable outcome. We helped thousands, hundreds of thousands of people get out of Ukraine and fly to the UK. So yeah, sometimes, I mean, we have to always be open to change. It's not always easy, but we also have to be open. We have to be open and understand the greater context and share that with our teams, because usually the delivery teams, your backend, your front ends, they're only going to be focused on like their tasks. They're not going to understand which is the greater context. And I think that you as a project manager, because you know the business value and everything else behind, you have to share that with them as well, so they can feel that they bring some value.
So in a way, you are saying that scope creep can become also something positive if managed correctly, if assessed correctly, and it's not always negative that the scope of the project is increasing. If it's increasing in a healthy way, it can even, the project can benefit, the organization can benefit, and we can have a better outcome.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like with the risks and issues. Sometimes they become opportunities. It's the same with scope creep.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Anything else?
I just wanted to, I don't know, to share a situation and maybe think about this together. So I heard you, Florentina, that you said the very more times we prioritize. We. Some on some of the projects, we are the project managers and the product owner is from the client. So we are expecting that the product owner aligns very well with the stakeholders and come to us and to say the priorities and things like this. But what we can do if the product owner is not so product owner, let's say, and we as a project manager, we need to take the lead, let's say, something.
Yeah, it's fun. I've been in that position. In this type of cases where the product owner isn't actually involved and is just with the name, I think it's really important to include your team in the decision, because you as a project manager, especially in software projects, you don't have the technical knowledge to actually understand what's actually going to happen. And if you don't have the product owner, which is unfortunate, you can still have your team. And I know it's not the best way, and that's why theoretically you have a product owner. But you have to rely on your team. You can tell them the context, the business value, and you as a project manager should theoretically have access to like vision, strategy, timelines, milestones, things like this. And then alongside with your team, which is going to be backends, front ends, maybe a business analyst, which is a good candidate for replacing the product owner, can start working on that. So if you have a business analyst instead in your team, you can start with him, her, in getting the requirements from like a business perspective, and then you can rely on the technical folks to actually split that and help you understand, okay, which is the most important feature to be delivered for this specific feature. So rely on your team. You know the theory behind Agile and Scrum. You are not the one estimating the work, and you have to rely on your team. So yeah, this is what I would do, and this is what I did when I was in this position.
Yes, I do this also because I'm not a technical person, and here I am. Um and the team helps me very well because based on their recommendation, I can go to the product owner and explain to him, hey, this feature, I know that you want it in Q1, or but we also have this and this, please re-prioritize and things like this.
Mhm.
Still I find it hard, but I think we'll be better with the time.
Mm, yes, it will be better in time. Um, but yeah, that's why usually you have a product owner, because you actually need that person. The project manager isn't actually supposed to know a lot of things related to the product. You know things related to the project, that's why it's a difference between product and project.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any other questions?
If no one, I can add another question related to the prioritization part.
Yes, sure.
I saw that you are using Moscow, which is a great skill. I'm also using that one. How can you maintain not to have all the requirements as a must?
um so you can what I was doing, so when I was using Moscow, we were actually using Kanban, not Scrum, if it actually matters. And we would just try to make them understand which is the most crucial things for them, based on business value, or more quantitative would be if they have like any deadlines, because if it's something that has a deadline tomorrow versus something in the next 2 months, it's going to be a must have versus a should have. And because we were using Kanban, we would always do the must haves first, and if we had the time, we would bring in should haves or could haves as well. But again, it's trying to make them understand if it's something that has to be delivered in the next iteration, and it has to be delivered in the next iteration, or it can still wait for the next one. So this is we were just doing some time pressure on them. We're applying pressure on timelines.
But I'm guessing you are doing like a prioritization at the beginning of the implementation, and if something occurs during the implementation, you are prioritizing, right? You are not doing it like each sprint.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I know it's not the best answer, but it's really tricky to make your stakeholders understand what's important and what's not. And we usually, yeah, would just use timelines and things like this. The project where I was using Moscow, it was a government project, and we would always have deadlines, so it was kind of easy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I would just like to thank everyone for coming here. I know it's very late. I hope it was not boring, and I hope you had at least something valuable out of it. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have more questions, please don't forget about the the feedback form. I'm really keen to come and present something else, or see any of you presenting any other subject. So thank you so much for being here, and I wish you a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Florentina. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great. Amazing.
Thank you, all
Thank
of you.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Florentina.